Foreign Minister has given a press conference at the OAS in response to the failure of a resolution seeking to expel Venezuela from the Organization of American States. Jorge Arreaza said the United States had failed to get the votes it wanted, and he thanked the countries of the Caribbean in particular for standing up to the huge pressure put on them by the United States. Arreaza was also critical of the proceedings within the organization.
It was somewhat an excuse to speak about Venezuela, about the isolation to Venezuela, and to attempt to listen to the orders given in this room. The Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence, just a couple of weeks ago, when he visited this organization and provided clear orders, you can review them yourselves, orders of a character so that the countries of this organization could intervene in the internal affairs of Venezuela, to isolate it with unilateral measures, illegal measures, coercion measures, and to do what he was asking for.
Venezuela's Communication Minister Jorge Rodriguez condemned the OAS resolution as well and congratulated Foreign Minister Arreaza's response to the external attacks.
We are not going to tolerate any kind of insult or aggression against Venezuela. Our Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza has responded to all the attacks and lies from the Lima cartel and other governments which received political pressure. They didn't succeed. They needed 24 votes and yet they failed again. And with only 19 votes, they approved a resolution that violates the Organization of American States' own constitution. It's totally worthless for Venezuela to be part of an organization that doesn't respect their own constitution. The OAS, fortunately, is no longer unanimous. There are already countries that raise their voice and their right to be free and sovereign.
Last year, a series of attempts at the OAS to win support for intervention in Venezuela also failed, partly because of the opposition from CARICOM members. This year, the vote was closer. 4 countries opposed the resolution to expel Venezuela, including Bolivia, Dominica, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. 11 members abstained, including Antigua and Barbuda, Belize, Grenada, Haiti, St. Kitts and Nevis, Suriname, and Trinidad and Tobago. The 19 countries that voted for the resolution included Bahamas, Barbados, Guyana, Jamaica, the Dominican Republic, and St. Lucia. Dramatic video footage has emerged showing firefighters desperately trying to escape from a huge cloud of ash behind them after the Fuego volcano erupted on Sunday in Guatemala. Let's take a look now. Dale, dale, dale. Dale, Chávez.
Hay gente.
Local media reported that the firefighters are alive after their ordeal, but the full extent of their health is unknown. And search and rescue efforts on the outskirts of the Fuego volcano in Guatemala have been affected by new eruptions and heavy rainfall.
Little by little, rescue teams are reaching the slopes of the Fuego volcano in the village of El Rodeo. The landscape makes the magnitude of the tragedy clear. Vehicles overturned by tons of volcanic material. Houses completely buried bring to the light the number of people who could not escape the eruption.
My aunts are missing. Also the children are missing. I don't know where they are.
The search has been difficult because there is still extremely hot volcanic waste in the area, which prevents entry to the most affected communities. The survivors say that they can identify where there are families buried, but due to safety precautions, they are prevented from getting to the disaster zone.
We have to identify the bodies. They are probably disfigured, but if we find the place, we could probably recognize who they are.
Between the debris, animals have been found alive, but with severe cases of dehydration.
Some of them are hungry, some of them burned, some intoxicated. We have irritated eyes. The biggest problem is that we carry them to a safe place, but there is no one who takes them to their families, so they will probably get lost.
A new and powerful eruption forced rescue teams to evacuate the disaster zone and suspend their rescue efforts. At the same time, dozens of families have left the southern department due to the fear of toxic gases from the volcano.
Our Guatemala correspondent Santiago Bouton is on the ground in the area and he has the latest details.
We are in a shelter located in Palín, Escuintla. We are waiting for the signal for us to then enter the Lucernos community in the Tequizate district in Escuintla, where they have a temporary shelter to help more than 200 families that fled the Trinidad district during the volcano eruption. This shelter has been recognized by the National Disaster Coordinator. Humanitarian aid hasn't been easy because of difficulties accessing the area. For now, access to the community is partially restricted by a lava slide following a secondary eruption yesterday afternoon.
Thank you for that report, Santiago. Colombian candidate Gustavo Petro has been endorsed by the National Indigenous Organization. The coalition published a statement in which they say that voting for Petro is voting for the end of violence in the country to achieve the goals established by the peace accords. They say that over the past year, they've seen benefits of the peace agreements, like a decrease in victims, social and economic development in the areas of conflict, and democratic participation in the communities.
Colombia Humana.
Let's vote on June 17 for Gustavo Petro, for Colombia Humana, because that is voting for life, voting for peace, for a transformation to end corruption, and so we Colombians have a chance for a real change to dignify everyone's life. We are voting for Petro. We are changing this country into the new generation who live in peace. Join us.
And 3 months after Peruvian President Martin Vizcarra took office, political analysts believe that there have been no meaningful changes to government policies, and they fear Vizcarra is beholden to the ultra-conservative sectors like Fujimorismo.
In press briefings, President Martin Vizcarra attempts to separate himself from any similarities to his predecessor, deposed former President Pedro Pablo Kuczynski. Yet, when Vizcarra talks about economic development plans for the country, his focus remains on a model based on exports, which is the same as the past 5 governments.
As I said on March 23rd, the day I took office, and as was ratified yesterday, there will be no change to our economic policy. As a matter of fact, we are fully behind our policy.
Some political sectors say they see Vizcarra offering gestures of goodwill towards the people. They point to his intention to provide autonomy to local governments, but economic policies that have long benefited the business sector remained unchanged.
Words are not enough. The people want to see real commitment. Will there be tax justice in our country? Will those with the most be made to pay what they should?
I believe Mr. Vizcarra has to move forward with early elections because he has not chosen to lead the country.
For political analysts, Vizcarra is a weak government. He has no support in Congress, nor with social sectors, leaving him to rely on ultra-conservative sectors such as Fujimorismo.
It's quite evident they're in negotiations with Fujimorismo as well as with private sectors. The pressure comes from agriculture exporters, from businessmen like Roque Benavides and the National Confederation of Private Business Institutions. But now they start to realize they must also deal with the pressure coming from people's malaise.
Vizcarra has also said he will maintain Kuczynski's foreign policy, such as leading the Lima Group. For analysts, this is yet another sign that Vizcarra stands for neoliberal continuity.
The Inter-American Court of Human Rights has made a decision on former Peruvian President Alberto Fujimori's pardon. The verdict, however, has yet to be made public. The announcement was made by the lawyer Ronald Gamarra, who carried out several investigations into corruption and human rights violations during Fujimori's term. The Inter-American Court has yet to notify its decision to the parties before making it public. Relatives of the victims of the massacres of Barrios Altos and La Cantuta requested the court's intervention after the former Peruvian president Pedro Pablo Kuczynski granted a controversial pardon to Fujimori last December. Meanwhile, the Peruvian Congress will decide if Fujimori's son, Kenji, will be expelled from the chamber after alleged vote buying. Kenji is accused of illegally trying to prevent the dismissal of the president back then, Pedro Pablo Kuczynski, who resigned in March. On Twitter, Kenji said he's ready for the battle. We're going to take a short break now, but join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. The Lula for President website has been launched by the Brazilian Workers' Party to support former President Lula Ignacio da Silva. In a video posted to Lula da Silva's Facebook page, leader of the Workers' Party, Galice Hoffmann, announced the launch of Lula's pre-candidacy this Friday in Minas Gerais. Lula will be registered as a presidential candidate on August 15th. Fundraising efforts will go forward despite the political persecution and imprisonment of the beloved leftist leader. Okay. That's good. And demonstrations on the ground remain strong in support of the Workers' Party's leader and former president. For more on this, we have this report from our correspondent, Adriana Robreño, in Brasilia.
Social movements and representatives of Brasilia have camped outside the Ministry of Housing to defend urban reforms and the social program called My House, My Life. They are marching to the Federal Supreme Court to demand the freedom of former President Luiz Ignacio Lula da Silva. This demonstration is part of a protest across the country against the housing policies of President Michel Temer, who has reduced public funds and investment for social programs like My House, My Life. Protesters are demanding the release of Lula da Silva so that he can become the new president and continue working on much-needed housing and social programs in the country.
Brazilian Fernanda Colombo will be the first woman to participate as a referee in the FIFA World Cup. The head of the Brazilian Referee Commission, Antonio Ferreira, has handed over the FIFA credentials to include the 25-year-old referee to the World Cup tournament, making her the first. Colombo was recognized as one of the best sideline referees in the Brazilian First Division tournament. Opposition groups in Nicaragua continue their campaign against President Daniel Ortega. Social media has played a critical role during this crisis, which has been going on for more than 50 days.
Teodora has lived in one of Guatemala City's busiest streets for over 10 years. She sells cooked beans and firewood to support herself. She has no knowledge of social media, but she knows what's happening in the streets and what she wants for her country.
What I want is for this craziness to end. Innocents are dying. Infrastructure is being damaged. They are only making things worse for all of us. I have stood with Daniel Ortega from the beginning. He has been a good president.
Journalist and political analyst Absalon Pastora believes that what's happening in Nicaragua is just a masquerade that has used social media to spread lies.
What we are living through cannot end in war. This is what some media outlets are pushing for, so that all of Nicaragua ends up mourning more losses. A killer is not just one that pulls the trigger, but those who incite violence, be it through videos or in written form. Such methods might end up being deadlier than a rifle's magazine that was just emptied.
Lower House Representative Edwin Castro believes that disinformation on social media is damaging Nicaraguan society. It creates unstable political and economical environments. Nonetheless, he trusts that reason and maturity will prevail.
We have seen dead police, dead children. I hope that the OAS approves the resolution we presented and condemns this wave of violence during the recent bilateral dialogue. Our first request was an end to this violence, but he has continued. There are other representatives here who preach about peace, but are financing protests.
The Episcopal Conference, which served as a mediator and witness in the recent peace talks, decided to stop conversations due to the ongoing violence. The government has continued to call for peace and dialogue with the opposition in order to find a solution to the conflict.
Truck drivers in Argentina are headed towards a general strike to demand higher wages and reject the government's negotiations with the IMF. This could affect garbage collection and fuel transportation. If it keeps going, it could create shortages of products all over the country. Workers say they face a cost of living that surpasses their salaries, so they are demanding an increase of 27% to match the price of inflation for 2018. Meanwhile, mass firings and factory shutdowns continue as President Mauricio Macri vetoed a law that would have stopped the price hikes.
Honestly, I don't understand why the government continues to strangle the popular sectors, unless they want to start a social conflict. If this continues, that's what they'll get, because we will not give up our jobs. So we truly hope the government stops provoking us.
We have tried to have an open dialogue over what's happening. We don't just want to talk about our salaries, but also about the IMF's so-called assistance, the price scale, and the general uncertainty we live in.
We need to fight and twist the government's arm. They cannot keep trying to accommodate all masters. Workers can't take it anymore.
Also in Argentina, members of the press have taken to the streets to protest against increasing hardships in the country. Our correspondent, Edgardo Esteban, has more.
On the eve of Journalists' Day in Argentina, media workers are demonstrating in response to the difficult situation they are facing, including the hundreds of layoffs that happen daily in Argentina. In 2018 alone, there have been 500 press workers' layoffs from both public and private institutions. And under the administration of President Mauricio Macri, there have been more than 3,000. Journalists are also denouncing the regular police repression under the security policies that President Macri is implementing, which have affected demonstrations put on by different sectors of the country. Participants in today's mobilizations say they only want to protect the jobs of journalists in the country.
We thank Edgardo Esteban for that report. In Barbados, Prime Minister Mia Mottley and her economic team met with an IMF delegation headed by Bert van Selm as the country contemplates entering an IMF program. The government also announced the appointment of the British firm White Oak Advisory as its financial advisor in the debt restructuring process. It is expected that Barbados' credit rating will shortly be adjusted down to selective default, as is customary when debt restructurings are announced. Celisa Nanton has spoken of her intention to use her reign as Minister in Vincent and the Grenadines 2018 to shine a light on the plight of young people being bullied. Nanton has so far used her platform to be a voice against bullying, and she hopes to continue so that she can make positive and lasting changes among the younger generation and adults. Dominica's Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit criticized the United Workers' Party's position on marijuana on the grounds that it lacks conviction. Skerrit, who supports the use of the now illegal herb for medical and religious purposes, has called for a wider debate on its use. The United Workers' Party, however, would like to secure Dominica's place in the global hemp industry, arguing that there's a demand for hemp-based products.
I will say, I'll say with great humility that sometimes my thinking is ahead of many, Our view in the government is that the issue of, there are different components to the issue of marijuana. And in listening to the leader of the opposition, it is clear that he has not understood the various components of marijuana and what needs to be done. You have one issue in Dominica in terms of young people who would have been arrested for marijuana, cigarettes or so to that nature, and would be criminally charged, and that charge would remain on the person's record for a very long time.
Women in Chile are rallying again to protest violence against women and put an end to the patriarchal culture in the country. Our correspondent in Santiago, Thierry Valenzuela, brings us the details.
The feminist wave keeps spreading in Chile. Women have taken the streets not only to demand a free, public and quality education, but also a non-sexist one. The goal of today's demonstration is to get women, mothers, migrants and workers to urge the Chilean government to listen. We will see how this demonstration goes here in Santiago de Chile.
We'll take a short break now, but join us again after another look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. In Jordan, hundreds have gathered outside the headquarters of the Professional Unions Association as some unions pressed ahead with a strike protesting against tax hikes, even after King Abdullah replaced his prime minister to try to diffuse public anger. Shops, pharmacies and some hospitals were also on strike in the capital as protests have shaken Jordan, a U.S. ally that has mostly escaped the turmoil that has buffeted its neighbors in the Middle East in recent years. In a rare move, a judge in California in the United States has been removed from office after he awarded a lenient sentence to a Stanford University student accused of raping a young woman in 2016. Judge Aaron Persky gave a 6-month jail sentence to former Stanford University swimmer Brock Turner, who was convicted of sexually assaulting an unconscious woman. He was removed after a campaign to unseat him gathered 59% of the votes from the Santa Clara County's community. Elections like this one are exceptional. The last time a U.S. judge was recalled was in 1977. And finally, let's have a look at some other stories making headlines around the world.
Spanish police and Moroccan law enforcement halted 400 sub-Saharan migrants who were trying to cross the double fence at Ceuta this morning. It was reported that 2 migrants, one on each side of the border, were injured as they tried to jump over the 6-meter-high fences. Spain's 2 territories in northern Africa, Ceuta and Melilla, are areas where migrants regularly attempt to enter Europe. The lawyer for Harvey Weinstein, Ben Brafman, has confirmed that the disgraced Hollywood mogul pleaded not guilty to rape charges and says he is still working hard to exonerate him. This is despite the fact that allegations were brought against him by a long string of stars and former colleagues. After several years of conflict in Syria, the road linking the provinces of Hama and Homs near the town of Tel Bise has reopened after restoration efforts. The reopening of the road aims to improve economic conditions in the war-ravaged country.
After 6 years of this road being closed because of terrorist acts on the international highway between Homs and Hama, it confirms the return of security and safety and the normal life to this area, and it will have a positive impact on the social and economic situation.
And Ecuadorian police have confirmed the death of 3 prisoners at a prison in the city of Esmeraldas and 1 in Latacunga on Tuesday. In a press conference, authorities reported that a riot in the prisons of Esmeraldas and Latacunga resulted in the deaths of 4 inmates and caused injury to 23 others. The riot in Esmeraldas, authorities say, is a reaction to the installation of cell phone inhibitors, making it so that prisoners cannot use their mobile phones. The uprising took place as inmates became aware of the imminent transfer. Authorities say that everything is back to normal in the prisons and under control, but the damage to the facilities is severe.
At 6 a.m. in the morning, a riot began in the prison of Esmeraldas, where prisoners escaped their cells. A large fight started to take place, which resulted in the infrastructure of the prison being severely damaged. Prison cells that were inaugurated recently have been completely destroyed. Bathrooms, doors, and locks have also been damaged. The prisoners also entered the kitchen, where they took out gas tanks, which could have worsened the situation significantly.
And we've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesyourtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Tell Us Your English, I'm Sweeney Gray. Thank you so much for watching.
Little squat man comes in. One of